bless you all. May not even be able to hear me because of the wind that's blowing, but we'll give this a try. It's wintertime. We can definitely tell by the weather. I spent several days with a stomach virus. Was going to go today. Going to go fishing for a little bit, but opted because of the high winds. The window that I was going to have on the little lake that I was going to go to, the winds were going to be pretty bad pretty quick, so I opted to not go this day off and take a different day off to be able to go fishing for a little bit. But decided that I was going to sit down and try to make a little video and give you a little more information. A lot of people have appreciated different talks and stuff that I've made about crankbaits. It's just a way of fishing that you have to understand that for years it was kind of I just threw something until something bit, and for some reason here in the last year it started to make sense to me. Different things, different theories, I actually put them to practice. Of course, the good Lord blessed me with the boat that I have, and that's made it a huge advantage to be able to get out and go. So therefore, I've been able to learn a little more. So I want to try to pass on a little bit more information of not just crankbait fishing, but crankbait fishing at the specific time of year that we're in right now. It's wintertime. Now, wintertime around where I live is literally, we're talking about 50-degree water to about 40-degree water. A lot of people don't even believe you can catch them on a crankbait during that time. I'm going to tell you, and I'll show you in some of those videos, that it may very well be one of the best times of year other than spring to throw a crankbait in the wintertime. But you have to be somewhat selective of the bait you throw. Very easy way that a lot of people talk about crankbaits is a lot of people just flat out categorize all the crankbaits in a wide wobble and one that has a tight wiggle. That's what you hear constantly. Oh, it's a tight wiggle. Well, it's more than that. If you was to take 5 or 6 different crankbaits and use the exact same rod, exact same line, stand in one place, cast one out, reel it a time or two, paying attention to the speed that you're using, because that changes a lot. Just paying attention to the distance that you threw it, feel the wobble that bait makes, then change to the next bait. And gradually you'll see that the baits that you're successful with during the winter time aren't necessarily just tight wiggle. There must be something else to it, okay? I'm gonna give you one example. Out of all the little crankbaits I'm gonna show you today, I'm gonna show you which one has the widest wobble. And that would be this DT6. Now the DT6, in my opinion, other than a shad wrap, which I don't have as much experience, but I am using it this year. It's probably one of the best cold water crankbaits there is. It's interestingly probably one of the best crankbaits, and I'm not sponsored by Rapala or anybody. I love using Rapala, but I'm not sponsored by them. So ironically, that DT6 is probably the most consistent and big fish, small fish, bass producing bait, even in the middle of summer. All year long, pretty much that DT6. And a lot of it has to do with, it has the right profile, it dives the right depth at that 6 foot mark. Durability is not the best, but the wiggle is, it's not real wide, but it's not real narrow. you know, so, or real tight. So why does it sell so much? To be honest with you, that's one of the things about crankbait fishing that we may never really know. All you can do is, the more time you spend with a bait, the more you'll get confidence in that bait. You hear a lot of people talk about that, and they say that, you know, the more confidence you get in a bait, the more it works for you. Well, the truth of it is, the reason it does better for you is because you tend to use it more. Okay, so let's go to a different bait that it's kind of the same size, but literally it has probably one of the tightest actions of any crankbait there is out there. And that is this little OG Tiny. Now OG Tiny is 5/16. It's super flat, okay? It has hardly no curve to it at all. I've caught, I couldn't tell you how many fish that were over 3 pounds on this bait just last winter and some early this winter. I didn't use it a whole lot during the summer, just because this has a very small lip on it. So this bait really, once you put it on 10, 12 to 15 pound line, it probably really only goes about 3.5 feet. So, and again, a lot of times, I don't want to deceive anybody, because a lot of times that I'm successful throwing a lot of these shallower crankbaits, I'm going to lakes or I'm going to water that has a dirtier type water, not necessarily muddy, but dirtier water, and I'm literally throwing them in that shallow water. So that's why they're more successful, because the bass are in that water that's 3 foot or less. Okay, when you see me throwing a little bit larger size bait, look at the water clarity. The water clarity has a lot to do with what bait, what things you're going to do. Here pretty soon, because of the way it is in wintertime, you're going to see a lot of these lakes. Here pretty soon I'll start trying to fish a little more of that shad wrap, because I want to get the experience in it, because the profile and the way that it wiggles and everything, for what I've seen so far, it does really good. And even in clear water, or somewhat clear water, and wintertime, they're keyed on those bait fish a lot. So that'll be a bait that I throw, but I'll also be throwing a little small tight line bait. But when that water starts getting dirtier again, that's when I'll go back to these, like this OG Slim. Now, here's something that's very interesting as far as these baits. You see a bait like OG, and this OG Slim 6, okay, and you see this DT6. And you would say, well, I would throw that DT6 in clearer water, and I would throw this bait here in dirtier water. And my question to you would be, why? What's your thinking process with that? You'd say, well, it's because this is smaller, so this is going to have a tighter wiggle action than this one. Actually, it doesn't. The way this bait is made, the action in this bait right here, while you're reeling it, it moves, but you can barely feel it vibrate if you reel it at the same, at certain speeds. When I reel this bait here, I'm not throwing it out and barreling it down to me. I'm throwing this out and I'm slowly reeling it back to me, and you would be amazed at this bait here, you can barely feel it thumping in the water. And it's the exact same setup as all these baits. Honestly, this Bagley flat balsa bead too has more of a side-to-side action. It's a lazy action, but it has more of a side-to-side action than this OG Slim does. So this bait here has a lot, almost the same action as this DT6. Not quite as hard a vibration, but a lot of that depends on one major thing: the speed that you're reeling the bait at. That is probably one of the biggest things that people overlook more than anything with their crankbaits. You could take a crankbait and put it on a 7.5 gear ratio reel. Same brand. Put it on a 6.8 gear ratio reel. And then put another one, and we're talking about exact same rod, exact same line setups and everything. And then put it on a 5 to 6. And all of them have the same line, all of them have the same length of rod. Make the cast with the same bait and reel that bait back to you, and the vibration of that bait changes completely. You'll be amazed at how much different that bait feels in vibration coming back to you. What does that mean? Well, I believe that has a lot to do with the triggering of those bass. They're not looking for a high speed vibration in the wintertime. In the wintertime, I have been a lot more successful on that 5 to 6 gear ratio or slower to that 5 to 1. Simply because of the action that those baits produce. A lot of times, I prefer the balsa baits, yes. But I've even heard and I've watched videos of guys using other baits like the rock crawlers. The wiggle wort's probably one of the biggest ones people talk about in the wintertime. It's the speed that you're moving that bait. The problem that you run into is a lot of people are trying to keep their bait on the bottom. So in order to keep it on the bottom, you have to reel the bait faster, okay? Not a ton, but you have to reel the bait a little bit faster. One of the other determining things is you hear people talking about, oh, the bait floats up too fast, it gets away from the fish. So after it bumps a stump, bumps something, they want to let it sit there for a little bit. And then the bass comes up and grabs it. So most bass are probably going to be sitting in a brush pile. So you bring your little bait through there and you bounce it in that cover, and instead of just bouncing it, reeling it, and keeping it going, one of the best things you can do is to reel it, let it bounce around that cover. When you feel it bounce a time or two, let it sit for just a second and then reel it. And I'm not talking about count to 10. I'm just talking about reel, 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 reel. That little motion that I just stopped right there, that's all you have to do. And then that bass, if it doesn't fly out of his face floating up, he'll come up and he'll get it. That's why a lot of those old timers used to use those little spin dots and everything else to put on baits, so that what it would do is, even in those balsa baits, it would slow that rise. So instead of that bait bouncing, which is normally what you want it to bounce and pop back out of the brush. In this case, in the winter, you want it to bounce and slowly come up, okay? So how can you achieve that? Well, you can put bigger hooks on a bait, you can do different things. Just remember that whenever you put bigger hooks on a bait, you're changing the action of that bait. Sometimes you're making the action completely slower when it's wobbling. Sometimes you're making it to where it'll start sinking, it won't rise. But those are different things with a crankbait in the wintertime that I think a lot of people, we try to oversimplify it, okay? And just say, well, just go out there and just throw it, and as long as you got a tight wiggle, you're doing good. Well, people go out and fish the same way they fish in the summer with their crankbait, and they think, well, I don't know why I'm not getting any bites. Well, you can't fish it the same way you fish in the summer and be successful. You have to be a little more methodical. You have to try to use your crankbait like you would a jig. You wouldn't throw your jig out there and bring it back to you a mile a minute. No, you'd sit there and you'd work it through the cover. Well, you need to do the exact same thing with your crankbait. If you'll rewatch those videos that I've shared about crankbaits and the success that I've had with crankbait in the wintertime and been blessed to catch, I mean, quite a few fish with them, you'll see that I'm not in a hurry. I may cast 2 or 3 times the same little brush pile. I may cast 2 or 3 times the same little stretch. Why am I doing that? I'm not doing that just because. I'm doing that because I have felt a brush in that section. I'm doing that because I felt it take a rock. That's why I have slowed down and cast. Sometimes you may not notice it, but sometimes I may have gone down the same little stretch 14 to 20 times. That's something else that a lot of people, you know, I do cover water, but when it comes to a point that you find some fish, it's not going to hurt to turn around and come back through that area. You know, I may go through an area and catch 2 or 3 fish on this right here and be blessed to have catch 3 fish. I may go down 100 feet, 120 feet, and be like, man, I haven't gotten a bite in a little bit. The only place I got a bite was back there. I'll turn around and refish that area with that little bait right there that I caught the original fish on. And then what will I do? If I don't catch fish on it, I'll turn around and tie a different balsa bait that gets about the same depth range and just comb it one more time down through there. Sometimes I'll pick a fish or two up. Sometimes I won't, but I've learned, okay, well, that must have been all the fish that pulled up in that section. You know, one of the questions that somebody asked me, or I seen a post, somebody was asking the other day, well, in the wintertime, what time do you wait to go fishing? Do you wait to go the afternoon or do you go in the morning? Well, there's two different theories. One theory is that, and this applies in my opinion, okay, to dirtier water. The afternoon is usually better because it takes time to heat the water up, and it heats that muddier water up. In my opinion though, when it's cold, when it's clear water, those fish move up, and because it's clear water, the same rules apply as it does in the middle of summer. They're not going to sit up there and hang all day long. If there's no wind, if there's no cloud cover, and that sun's just beating directly down on them, a lot of times they're going to move back out after 11 or 12. So you have to fish the weather. You can't go through there and just fish the baits. You have to fish the weather. It goes back to, you need to be where the fish want to be when they're there, okay? That's kind of one of the reasons why this morning I decided just to stay home, because I knew already that if I'm only going to have a 3.5 hour window, then the options that I was going to have as far as the places to cover, I'd probably just wait to a different day. Why? Because I didn't feel like my success rate was going to be very good today. I'd rather sit around the house, tidy up on some more little things I need to do a little side things here at the house, sit around and rest, because I'm just now starting to feel better, and then in a few days, Lord willing, I'll be able to go. But anyway, I figured I'd sit down and I'd talk a little bit more about crankbaits. Hopefully some of this have helped you. Hopefully it's made sense. Sometimes I get to talking and it runs away with me, but anyway, anybody has any questions, anybody has any comments, message me. I don't care a bit to try to help anybody. Wintertime though is, please be safe. Don't go out and just try to catch fish to show somebody that you can catch fish. Wintertime is a very dangerous time to be on the water, even more so than any other time of the year, because the water is so cold. I keep extra hoodie, extra jeans, extra socks, extra pair of shoes in my truck, okay? Just in case was to accidentally, Lord hope not, but that would fall in the water or anything, or somebody that goes with me would, because you definitely want to change out of everything so fast. Another thing is, I always have 3 or 4 different pairs of gloves just in case with me in my tackle bag in the boat. You never know when anything's going to happen, you know. Most of the time I wear my rain gear as my over everything in the summertime, because it keeps that heat trapped in, keeps the wind off of you. If it gets warm, then you take it off. It's better to have it than not to have it. You can get those little things you put in your socks and everything else, or in your gloves, the little hand warmers. But just be careful this time of year. It's usually better, I know a lot of us go alone, but it's usually better if you are going to go alone, at least tell somebody that you went and where you went. Anyway, it's just a few little tips about wintertime fishing. I love wintertime fishing. There's usually not as many boats on the water. That's another reason why you need to be safe, because there's not going to be as many people past you during the day. You need to be careful. But it's still a time that you can still catch fish. Just be safe. If there's going to be a blizzard that day, consider the ramp. A lot of people don't consider the ramp you're going to put it on. You know, if it snowed for 2 or 3 days in a row, guess what's going to be all over that ramp? Good chance there's going to be snow all over that ramp. So maybe not pick a place that's got as steep as a ramp. Pick one that you know that is taken care of. So all those little things are part of wintertime fishing. But hopefully those tips about wintertime cranking. I will tell you this quick little thing too. You hear a lot about, in the summertime especially, about bouncing crankbaits off of cover. That triggers fish. In the wintertime, it still applies. But in the wintertime, you need to give the fish a second. When it bounces off that cover, like I was saying earlier, give it a second. Just skip one reel handle. That's all you need to do. You're cranking, that's all you got to do. And it'll give that fish just a second. But I have caught them before to where I didn't touch anything on the bank. So anyway, God bless you all. Don't forget, Jesus loves you. Y'all have a blessed day.